Today's Reframing Eye Care podcast guest is a student, Carissa Fleming. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much, Maria. It's so great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. She currently is a fourth-year student at NECO and spends the past year really being involved in advocacy and leadership roles. Her advocacy efforts have led her to winning Student Excellence Award for the AOA on Capitol Hill Conference, former AOA PAC liaison at NECO, successfully led initiatives to raise awareness and importance of advancing our career forward. So it's been great to see students get involved, and she's been an AOA PAC advocacy ambassador for the East Coast and continues to connect and, really supporting this region, and has been recently one of the Cooper Vision Myopia Society liaisons, and is passionate about, her journey as an optometrist and where she comes to graduate very soon and maybe go into residency. So welcome to the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maria. It's so great to be here and just kind of share my thoughts and opinions about my journey, and then, what are the next steps.
Yeah, you're a student and you're really involved in industry already, which I think is great. Can you give us some information on how you to get into advocacy, how you got into it, why it's so important?
Yeah. I get this question a lot, and a lot of times, like, a lot of my colleagues come to me, they're like, did you have like a background in advocacy? Like, were your parents politicians? Like, how did you get started? I'm like, well, first of all, I knew absolutely nothing about advocacy or what it meant to advocate for the future of our career when I first started this journey. I was just really curious. I kept hearing the statement over and over again that optometry is a legislative-based profession. And I was like, that's great, but like, what does that mean? Like, what do I do with this information? And around the same time that I was getting curious about all these things, I saw that there was a conference. It was the AOA on Capitol Hill Conference, and they were giving out grants to students. Applied for the grant, I got the grant, and I was like, okay, great. The decision of the financial aspect of whether I attend this conference or not is kind of out of play. Now it's just like, do I go? And a lot of people are like, well, you got a grant, it's paid for, why aren't you going? And I'm like, well, you got to think about it. As a student, I'm like, I've never attended a conference before. I'm a first-year student. I know nothing about anything. Like, what? Like, and I have to fly to a different state where I know no one. And I'm like, I'm nervous. I'm scared. And so all these thoughts were going through my head. Like, I feel like whenever you're considering something new, like, you think about the worst possible scenarios, right? But then I asked myself, I'm like, okay, if I attend this conference, like, what is the worst possible scenario like that could happen? And for me, like, the most logical worst possible scenario was like, I go and I don't learn anything. Like, it's just a waste of 2 days. That was like the worst scenario. And I'm like, honestly, I can handle that. That's fine. I went, I attended, and I will say, like, it's hard not to go to this conference and not feel inspired as soon as you enter the doors. Like, this is a group filled of people that have so much energy, so much passion for this profession. And going there helps me to see how far we've come in optometry, how much privileges and rights we have to this day because of all the people that came before us. And I wanted to be a part of that movement. I wanted to help continue to advocate and progress our profession forward. And I think advocacy, it has to start early on. Like, it takes a long time to get things in motion. So you have to start. It's never too early to start, right? So I attended the conference. I started having more questions, but I started to be in the environment where I was connecting with all these docs, where I was able to get my questions answered. I started talking more, expanded my network, expanded my community, and that's kind of been how I started in advocacy.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I attend a lot of conferences. I think conferences have a lot of value. But they're just, other optometrists and students maybe that don't go. Do you think it's worth spending the money to attend these conferences, and even while they're in optometry school, right? I mean, students are on a budget.
No, exactly. Like, that's a great question. Like, as a student, like, I feel like we barely afford to like eat some days. I'm like, how am I going to get more money to go to a conference? Like, especially if I've never been to a conference before. And I think the question, like, it's like, what I thought about was like, what is the purpose behind me going to a conference? And figuring out, like, if I'm going to attend a conference, am I there to passively learn, or am I going to actively engage? Because there's lots of ways to passively learn, like at home, like through different resources online. But I think it's important when you attend these conferences to actively engage and go out and like build upon these connections, build new connections, go meet someone you didn't come to the conference with. And if that is part of the reasoning behind going to a conference, I think it can be worth it. I think it is worth it to putting some money into or investing into your future. But it really comes down to the why. So there's also different opportunities for grants and scholarships as well as a student. A lot of times, a lot of people, they want the students to come to conferences, they want to connect with you. So depending on the conference, there are opportunities for that. And a lot of the times, how I learned about these opportunities was through like my school would send out emails about different opportunities, and I would be able to apply for the grant or scholarship. Or I started to connect with different optometrists or different optometry companies through LinkedIn and Instagram, and they also kind of post about these opportunities. So there's lots of resources out there for you to utilize.
Yeah. So when you go to these conferences, how do you save money for it as a student? How do you network as a student? Do you feel intimidated going up to doctors, going up to vendors? Because this is real. I mean, this is real in the industry. Even doctors that have been out for years sometimes are nervous to start a conversation with, another doctor that they don't know.
Yeah. So for the first part of the question, it was like, how did I save up for it? Well, mine is so grants and scholarships for sure. But like, if you don't get a grant or scholarship, I started to find other students who were interested or other people who were interested in attending, and then we would like split a room. So we split the cost of a room. So that helped a lot with the cost of the hotel. But also, this was not my initial intention behind this credit card that I got, but one of the credit card I have, it's like the Marriott Bonvoy credit card. So every like penny I spend goes towards points. And so like throughout the like year, I build up enough points, and then I use a lot of those points to help me pay for like the hotel. So that offsets a lot of the cost. But going on to the next question about like, how do I network? I've attended, I think, like a good handful of conferences now throughout my academic career, and it's still so nerve-wracking. I'm not gonna lie, but I will say, like, these conferences, you're in an environment that is conducive for networking. Like, you're not at a coffee shop. You're not like cold starting a conversation with like a random stranger in the coffee line. Like, that's a lot weirder. And I think people go in with the mindset like that's what it's like at a conference. I'm like, no, it's not like that at all. Like a lot of these like docs or a lot of these people, they're like they expect you to kind of approach them. So when you do approach them, their reaction to you approaching them is usually pretty receptive and positive. Especially like as a student, I think there's so much grace with you trying to approach them, because they know this is out of your comfort zone. They know like a lot of students don't attend these conferences, so you just even going up there and like having the having the ability to get out of your comfort zone, I think means a lot to them. And a lot of times they're so willing to just offer advice, offer just mentorship. They just want to be able to make your journey a little bit easier than what their journey was getting there. So that's just been my experiences so far.
Yeah. I think everyone's inviting, right? Everyone wants to talk to everyone. Everyone's very nice at conferences. It's everybody wants to meet different people. When you're, make these connections and conference, how do you, keep the connections going after the conferences, right? I know what I do because I go to a lot of conferences. I want to know what you do as a student, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that and help doctors network beyond just conferences.
Yeah. So a lot of times, like, there's just like a limited amount of time to talk to like everyone, right? So a lot of times I'm like, I love to continue on the conversation. So continue on the conversation could be through different means. Like I'll either take down their information. I'm like, oh, are you on LinkedIn? Are you on Instagram? Could I connect with you? Because that's also a passive way to stay connected. Like, it's like, if you think about it, like, how do you stay connected with like family and friends when they don't live in the same state as you? You do that through like different platforms such as social media. And when you are able to connect with them through these different platforms, you're able to like keep up with their posts. Like I'll like comment or like certain posts. I'll like stay connected that way. Like, it's a passive way to stay connected, but a more active way, what I usually do after conferences is I'll message them I'll message them on LinkedIn. I'll send them a message like, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about X, Y, and Z. Like, that's usually kind of how I went about it.
Yeah. So I think that's what I do as well. I connect on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great way to, network with colleagues and getting a lot of information, and then connecting with vendors too. Right. And then it's more professional and you get more of your optometry information. I get my latest news in optometry through that as well. And then, through the Facebook group that I have. But LinkedIn has been a great way to connect and, get information and, send a thank you note for the time that they spent with you at the conference. And sometimes that just opens up doors, right, for others. And a lot of the comments and likes within the LinkedIn community, their connections see. So that opens up even wider network. And it seems like such a big, industry, but it's so small, and everybody knows everybody. And a lot of vendors and doctors are looking for the next generation of great optometry leaders like yourself. And they're happy to network and, meet the young docs. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like when I try to explain conferences to like my fellow colleagues, I'm like, think about it like summer camp. It's like the same people who go to these conferences will go there year after year. You're seeing the same people over and over again. When you make a connection, it's not just for that few days you're there. It's like, no, you're building a lifelong connection. And it's a lot easier to reconnect with someone than to like start a new connection over and over again. So when you're making those connections, you'll probably see them again next year or the next conference. So it's really easy to keep building upon those relationships every time you attend.
Yeah. So tell us what, you're almost done with fourth year coming up, and tell us about what your plans on after graduation.
Yeah. Well, I would really love to get into a residency program for pediatrics. So my plan is to hopefully attend academy, kind of just build upon those connections I have there, kind of figure out where would be the right fit for me, like what program would be the right fit, and hopefully complete a pediatric residency program.
Excellent. Yeah. So again, the conference is networking and getting information from people that have done it and know. Like-minded individuals. So that's why, again, it's important to do that. The other thing too I've come across is a lot of, young ODs, students now are, burnt out, and how do they handle the burnout during like board season?
Yeah. Boards. This is like a marathon. Like, wow. Like I completed part 1 of boards. I still have part 2 and part 3 to take. But I think what I did for part 1 was I had to maintain some sense of normalcy in my life. Like, a lot of people try to take out every single thing that makes them who they are and just focus on studying. Like, yes, you have to be very strategic in how you study, but you also have to keep some parts of your routine the same. For example, like I kept my workout routines the same. Like I do an Orange Theory class and I boulder. So I kept that the same in my schedule, but I took out a lot of the social aspects of my daily life because I needed to focus on studying, but I also needed to have some form of stress relief. So even up until like the week before boards, like I kept going to my workout class. I kept doing these things to help me feel like I wasn't just stripping away every part of who I am.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's a pleasure to call you a colleague. And thank you for what you're doing for optometry, because it benefits all of us. It benefits even the old doctors like myself. So where you guys have more energy than we do it. But bringing our profession forward, because it is such a great profession, and it is a legislative profession. And congratulations on all your awards and everything that you're doing as a student. It's very commendable.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maria.